Hi guys, welcome back. If you're new here, I'm Craig and I'm a software developer in the UK, and if you've been following along on the channel, we're here. We've arrived at the end of the series of videos that focuses purely on HTML. Over the next two videos, we're going to close off this section by using the majority of everything we've learned up until now to build a static landing page for a burger restaurant. Our landing page is going to include as much as we can reasonably fit from all of the content that we've covered so far. So we'll use semantic elements, we'll include text, headings, links and images. We'll have a list in our navbar at the top of the page and a form right at the bottom. We're going to give our elements classes and IDs, which will be used for navigation between sections of our page and also to add some styles that have been pre-written for you. I've included the pre-written CSS simply because it makes the page a little bit more visually appealing than if it was just a page of plain HTML. If you're already well versed with HTML, then this is probably not going to be the project for you. This is designed for beginners to tackle a medium-sized HTML focused project, and the main aim is to consolidate the learning that we've covered over the HTML series of videos so far on this channel. Before we start, make sure you smash the like button and subscribe to the channel. Lots more cool content on the way. We're on all of the main social media platforms as well, so keep up with us there, and the links are below in the description. Okay, so I have this page open, which is for a Chrome extension called Web Developer, which I've added. There's no need to add it yourselves unless you really want to. I'm just using it here in this video as it is going to enable me to disable the styles on any website, among other things provided by the menu tabs here. I'm using ESPN for now, and with all of the styles taken out, this is much more representative of the kind of pages that we can currently build in HTML. I just wanted to show you this to show you how much CSS brings to the web and to give you a good idea of the reason why I decided to include the CSS for this project. There's a big difference between this and this. Okay, so onto the project. As you can see, this is a landing page for a burger restaurant called Burger Base. And if we click the links in the navbar, we see this nice smooth scrolling that is made possible by JavaScript. So in addition to the CSS, I have also included this JavaScript to handle the smooth scrolling. We saw this same smooth scrolling in the video on link and image attributes, and I'm going to include it again here. It is available from this GitHub gist, which is linked below. And it is also included in the GitHub repo here. Like the CSS, I'll refrain from explaining the JavaScript as it is not the focus of this video. To get the code included in this repo, click Download, extract the zip, and then open this up in your text editor. We see the CSS and the JavaScript files are pre-written, and we've got HTML files. One is the finished HTML for this project, which is for your reference, and the other is a starting file, which is totally blank and ready for you to start writing your HTML. Without the CSS and JavaScript that I've included, the page would look like this. You can work in plain HTML if you prefer, or with the CSS included to build this page. If you can't or don't want to download the repo, there is another option. You can also go to CodePen, which is all set up and ready to accept your HTML. The CSS and JavaScript are included like with the GitHub repo, and you treat this HTML pane as the body section of your HTML file. You don't need to add the doc type, the meta tags, or a head section. Whatever you want to have showing in your browser, go straight in here and you can start following along once we are starting to add the code inside our body section. There's also a pen here with the finished project, and you can find this and the starting pen links below in the description. So the choice really is yours. You have the option to work directly in CodePen, and if you do, remember to fork it so that you can save your changes, or you can work inside VS Code or whichever text editor you're using. Personally, you're going to see me working in VS Code in this video, but it doesn't make any real difference which way around you do it. Just go with the best option for you. Okay, so now that we have all of that housekeeping out of the way, we can start building out the HTML. So let's take a moment to examine the finished project in Chrome. I'll right click and inspect, and we have the nav element, which contains a logo, and an unordered list, which contains 3 list items. These list items in turn each contain anchor elements which link to ID'd sections of the page, like the contact form at the bottom. We have a large header which contains an H1 and a button. Then we have these strips which contain quotes, an about section with some text, an images grid, a form, and finally a footer which contains a copyright symbol for which we'll need to make use of HTML entities. There's a wide variety of HTML elements that will be used here, as well as IDs and also classes which help us add some styling. So in this first video we'll build out the navbar logo and links, we'll create the header, and we'll also put in the footer. Then in the second video we'll complete the main section with the text and the image grid and the quote strips, and we'll add the form as well, and also we'll complete the page's internal linking. So I think the navbar is a good place to start, and we'll work our way down the page starting from the top once we've put our HTML boilerplate in place with the meta tags and any external dependencies that we need. So back to VS Code, I'll start by opening my start HTML file with Live Server, which is one of the extensions that we added right at the start of the HTML series of videos. If you don't have Live Server, it enables us to make any changes and have them automatically display in the browser, rather than us manually refreshing to see those changes. You can get this added to your VS Code by heading here to the Extensions tab, searching for Live Server, and then simply installing it. The one that you want is this one here by Ritwick Day. And if you're working in CodePen, then you're good. CodePen has an autosave feature and your changes will be automatically displayed. We're going to need an HTML boilerplate. Emmet is our friend here, and rather than coding the whole thing, we can type an exclamation mark and hit tab, and the work is done for us. Our title is Burger Base, and if we save, we see that in the browser tab here at the top. Next, we'll link the CSS and JavaScript files, and if you are in CodePen, then you don't need to do this. CSS files are linked in the head of our HTML files using a link tag with the href attributes value set as the path to the style sheet. So in the head, we'll use the Emmet shortcut of link : CSS, and we'll hit tab. And that's all we need to do actually, as our style sheet is called style.css, so we don't need to change that here. Our JavaScript file is linked using a script tag, and it could go in the head section, but we're actually going to put it in the body because the browser reads the HTML file from top to bottom, from line 1 down. So the head loads first, then the body, and then everything inside the body. So if we put our JavaScript links in the head section, then the browser would pass the entire JavaScript file before loading any HTML, which could cause problems. It could slow the page down, or for example, we could have JavaScript that is creating HTML elements, and we would be attempting to load those before the actual body section of the HTML file had loaded. So it's much better practice to put it in the body section at the bottom. So we'll add a comment that says scripts, and then we'll use another Emmet shortcut of script : src, and the source is going to be our JavaScript file, which is called app.js. We'll check both are linked correctly, and I'll add a simple h1 in the body with just any text in the middle, and I'll hit save, and we see that is displaying in a font which is not the default. So we know that that is coming from our CSS. It's also really small, and the background color has changed to kind of an off-white color. Then we'll open up the JavaScript file and we'll simply add an alert which says JS linked, and when we save, we see that that alert pops up in the browser, so we know that everything is working. So we'll start in the HTML body section with the outer wrapper div using the shortcut of div.wrapper, or alternatively we could just have the shortcut of .wrapper as div is implied. This container is just the element that is going to wrap all of the other elements in our body. Often the first bit of HTML that we always write inside the body of a new document is an element that wraps everything else on the page. The term wrapper is common for that. Sometimes you might see it called container. So we'll give it a class, and that class is responsible for encapsulating all of the visual elements on the page. We can use the wrapper to do things like align all of the content on the page, for example. We could set a max width for the page, and we could put in our margins and paddings, for example. So inside the wrapper goes the first part of our page that we're going to build, and that is the navbar. This is going to be the perfect use of the semantic nav element. And just to remind ourselves of the finished product, the nav element had a nested div to hold the logo and a list which was used as the nav links. We can make good use of Emmet to build this out, so we'll have nav angled bracket div plus ul angled bracket li times 3. We see again in the preview window what this is going to build, and that looks pretty much what we need. So I'll hit tab and Emmet generates this for us. Of course, each of the list items also has a link, so I'll make a multiple selection in each li element and type A and hit tab. In the hrefs, I'll just add a hash or octothorpe symbol for now to create some dead links. When we know the IDs of where we want these links to go, we'll come back and complete the relevant details. Each link will need some text that users can click, so we'll put these as home, about, and contact, respectively. If we save at this point, we see our elements are taken on the styles from the style sheet. Our navbar is this large element at the top of the page, stretching from left to right, and inside are our 3 list items that contain the nav links. If we hover over them, we see that these have some hover styles which come from the CSS, but clicking them at present goes nowhere due to them being dead links at present. The last thing in our navbar for us to create is that we need to work on the logo that will go inside of this div that we created. We'll give this div a class of logo, and creating some space inside the div, we will add a dead anchor link, and we will give this the text of burger base. If we save, we see that we have this nice text for our navbar logo, but if we quickly refer back to the completed project, we're missing the burger icon that precedes the text. This icon is actually taken from an external resource called Font Awesome, which is a font and icon toolkit. I'll put the link to Font Awesome below in the description. Until recently, Font Awesome would provide you a bit of code that you could copy and add that to your head section, kind of like a style sheet. And then you would have access to all of the icons in their database. They recently changed the way that you do things, requiring a sign up to give you your own kit. So if you do want to sign up and get that kit, then you can. If not, I happen to have one of these old links saved into a GitHub gist for you guys, which is linked in the description below. You can copy this code here and paste it into your head section, and you can now access the Font Awesome icon library. And if you're following along in CodePen, you don't need to do anything, as I've already linked this into the project for you. Once you've added this code to your head section, we can head to the Font Awesome website. If we click on icons and search for burger, the one that we want is here. So let's select that. And then we have this code, which is a bit of HTML, which is going to enable us to display this icon. So we'll click to copy the HTML, head back over to the text editor, and we'll paste this inside the logo div above the anchor tag, and we'll save. And there's our icon. Font Awesome gave us this icon as an I element, which is not particularly semantic, and the I element doesn't actually stand for icon, which some people might mistakenly believe, but it is actually used for text that is set off from the normal text and would usually be displayed in italic. We don't have to use this, and we really could use any element here that can be used for marking up textual content. So a span would do the trick, or we could use another div. We could use a P element, we could use H1, H2, H3, and so on. So I think for now, I want to be a little bit more semantic than just an I element, and I'm going to put this as a span. Okay, so with the exception of the navigation link locations, that's the navbar pretty much complete. I'll just add a comment here to say that this is the navbar, and below I'm going to add another comment for the header section. So the header section is a call to action to click the button and find out more. We have this large background image, a main heading, and this button which will link to a section below. The semantic header element seems perfect for this, and it has a main heading and this button which is actually just an A anchor element that has been styled to look like a button. Each of these parts of the header are inside divs that have the class of title content, and the header itself has the ID of title. So we'll add header, hash title, angled bracket, dots for class, title dash content times 2. And we'll check the window first to see if this is what we're going for, if this is what we're intending for Emmet to build, and we'll hit tab. Inside the first div, we'll add an H1 with the text content of burger base. If I hit save at this point, you can see that we're already most of the way there without much work really, and it's already starting to look fairly substantial. If we go to the head section of our file and comment out the linked style sheet, you'll see how incredibly simple the result of our page's HTML currently is. We've got a lot going on stylistically, and now we've commented the style sheet out, we can see the main header image has vanished. You might have wondered where this image is coming from, considering we have not added an image element anywhere in the HTML as yet. We can also add images as the background elements using CSS, and that is what we have done here. The nav element also has a background, but that is just set to a white color, whereas the background of the header is set as an image. If you downloaded the repo and are working inside VS Code, you'll have a folder called img, and this contains 5 images, one of which is the image for this main header image, and then there are 4 other images that will be used to populate the grid which we will build later. I found these images on unsplash.com by just searching for burger, and I downloaded them to this folder. In CodePen, I've simply linked from the direct URL of the image's location at unsplash.com. To complete our header, we'll add the button, which is a link styled to look like a button with this nice hover effect in place. So this is an anchor element with the class of button. So we'll put a.button and hit tab. And this is also going to be a dead link for now, until we know where it is going to navigate to on the page. Once we've built those sections out, we will have a better idea. We will finalize all of that in the second part of this 2-part video. The text on the button is going to be find out more, and we'll save, and there we go. We have the button in place, and other than the internal linking, our header is complete. So lastly, for this part 1 video, I'm actually going to jump right to the bottom of the page and get the footer out of the way really quickly, which is incredibly simple. And we can do this now so we can concentrate on the main page content in part 2 and the internal linking. The footer is going to be made with the semantic footer element, and we will give this the ID of footer also. It also has a nested P element, so we'll write this out as footer, hash footer, and then an angled bracket and P. And if we hit tab, that's basically it. That's the structure. All we need to do is add in the text. That is just some dummy copyright info that I wanted to include, just so we could make use of at least one HTML entity on our page, which is going to be the copyright logo. There's a really short video on HTML entities that I did before on the channel, so if you haven't seen that and want to find out more about entities, the link to that is popping up on screen right now. But in short, HTML entities allow us to add in characters that aren't readily available on standard keyboards, or we can also add in symbols which the browser would normally interpret as code. So we're talking about angled brackets that are used in HTML tags, for example. So in the P element, we'll add the text of Burger Base 2019. Then we need to add in the copyright logo, and we write entities using an ampersand, then the keyword or the number for the given HTML entity, then this is closed off by a semicolon. So between where we've written Burger Base in 2019, I'll go in and I'll write ampersand, then copy, which is the keyword for the copyright logo character, and then a semicolon, and this closes the entity. If we save now, we see that our footer is complete, and we made pretty short work of that. There's thousands of entities available for all kinds of symbols, like currency symbols and characters from languages other than English, and you can find them and their character references here at this link, which is down below in the description for you guys. So now we've completed our tasks for part 1 of this project, we'll take an opportunity to look at the raw HTML rendered in the browser. So let's comment out the style sheet once again, and you can see how much work the CSS is actually doing. And this is what every website in the world would look like without CSS being applied. Though this is incredibly simple in terms of HTML content on the page so far, we're making a lot of progress in terms of the structure that we're putting into place. We started with a wrapping element, then a semantic nav element, a semantic header element, and a semantic footer element, all of which are new to the HTML5 standard. The nav element contains a div which holds our logo, for which we source the icon from Font Awesome. The nav also contains our unordered list, which contains 3 list items, in turn each of which is holding a link which will eventually navigate to a given section of our page using internal linking once we've built the sections out to link to. The header contains a simple h1 and a link disguised as a button, and the footer has some copyright information that includes an HTML entity. So join me in part 2, where we'll add the remainder of this page, including these quote sections, the about section, the images, and the form. Plus we'll have all of the links navigating to the right places on the page. So if you're finding this content useful, remember to like, subscribe, comment, share, and all of that good stuff. Reach out to me on social media or email if you have any questions. The details are in the description below. You can also reach me in the comment section underneath. So thanks for watching. I hope you're making good progress and enjoying part 1 of the video so far, and I'll see you in part 2 where we will complete this project.